Everyone, my name is Yelena Edelstein. I am a deal partner at Blackmore Partners. Many of you know me. Who doesn't, I look forward to meeting you for the first time and catching up with those whom I spoke. We'll start this panel, and this is our first panel. The topic is how to select a private equity partner. Thank you very much to the panelists for participating, and we'll start with introductions. Please tell us a little bit about your firm and what kind of opportunities you're looking for. And then I have a few questions or a few topics prepared for this panel. Like Gerald said, we really appreciate you asking questions. It's really our goal to make it useful for you, and the more you participate, the more value you get. So with that, let's start with Thorsten Suter. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Yelena. So my name is Thorsten Suter. I'm with a Connecticut-based private firm called Capital Partners. We have a very generic name, primarily because we've been around since 1982. But Capital Partners, 6,000 Capital Partners come up. But we were a family office from 82 to about 2003. By family office, we were primarily investing capital for about 80 high net worth individuals and families. And we raised our first institutional fund with institutions in 2004. We raised a $143 million fund. We raised a second fund, which was a $360 million fund. Right now, we're closing a $600 million fund. We're a generalist firm. We focus on a broad array of industries. But really, the way we're different is we really focus on family and management-owned companies where they're looking for some liquidity, but they're looking to really take the business to the next level, and they need some help doing that. And they want to roll a significant amount of equity in the deal, and they don't want to put a lot of leverage on the business, like under a traditional LBO structure. That would limit their ability to really grow the business, and they focus more on banks and covenants versus really focusing on executing growth strategy and reinvesting in the business. So typically, we only use bank debt in our deals, no mezzanine or subordinate debt. So we over-equitize. Typically, 70-80% of enterprise value is actually equity in the deal. And this really allows management to really focus on executing growth strategy versus focusing on debt compliance. That's it.
Oh, Eric, please introduce yourself.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So just want to point out some interesting things here. The private equity team up here is without ties, and the executives are all with ties.
I noticed that too.
What does it say?
Although in New York, ties are pretty much mandatory.
Yeah.
So my firm actually has some similarities to Thorsten's. We were a former family office. Instead of being founded in 1982, we were founded in 1986. From 1986 until 2016, we were a family office. At the end of 2016, we raised a small private equity fund, $117 million, that we're currently now investing. Our firm looks for lower middle market opportunities. We define that as typically deals under 100 million of enterprise value. Their earnings could range anywhere from 2 to 15 million. That's kind of flexible. We prefer English speaking, so that's typically going to be either the United States or Canada. We're generalist investors. The one thing we don't do is real estate. I know there's one real estate person here, but it's a great field, but you have to have specific expertise in it and really have to know what you're doing. I've been with the firm about 6 years. Started as a VP and became a partner when they raised the fund. I'm very excited to be here. And this is now my second event here. I've also done 2 webinars. I don't know if anyone had a chance to listen in, but enjoyed both of those. So,
Eric, what brings you back multiple times? And I'm also going to be curious for all three of you. Your companies are coming back multiple times. I'm going to be curious about why this venue where traditionally private equity firms just really want deals.
Look, I would say, yes, I've been here 2 times, but I plan on being here another 2 times this year.
Yeah.
I think it's just a great way to meet, really interesting people with hopefully good deals. And it's in a very efficient use of an afternoon and an early evening. Mm-hmm. And we're big fans.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to have this is my second event as well. Met some really in this environment where deals are very competitive, to your point, you have to create a lot more value to create the returns that you're looking for that they used to generate historically, primarily through financial engineering. And really working with executives to help you diligence the idea, really understand where the levers are that you can pull to really accelerate growth, to justify the kind of multiples that we're paying, and really help to understand, where the bone's buried, where are the opportunities, and really how do you get it to the next level. And working with Ferdinand right now on a platform that could be quite sizable for deals that we source, and Ferdinand's experience in the industry has really helped us really identify where we want to play. And this has been a great venue.
Okay.
Where do you want me to start?
Yes, Peter, please.
Your firm.
Yeah.
Your firm.
So I'm with managing director with RFE Investment Partners. Very similar story. I predate these guys by a couple years. Our firm was founded in 1980. Always been a committed fund. So we've got institutional investors, across a portfolio, a portfolio funds. So we're currently finishing up the investment cycle in RFE 8. We'll be raising RFE 9 in the first part of next year. Always remain focused on kind of the lower middle market, so companies with revenues between 25 and 150 million at the point in time that we get involved, 5 million to 15 million of EBITDA, across kind of general manufacturing and business service opportunities. We do not do anything really in distribution. Don't do a whole heck of a lot in kind of pure retail, restaurant, and technology companies. But anything else, tech enabled, anything in the services space that we'll tend to take a look at. From an event perspective, I think the challenge that we always have in kind of going through the mainstream.
Mainstream is
mainstream, just the normal deal sourcing through investment banks and the like, is that it's coming with a defined team, and you don't always get to choose who that team is. But for us, kind of the number one success factor in investments is the CEO and the strategy and the drive. So I think this venue gives us a better opportunity to develop closer relationships with those individuals that are going to be running those companies, as opposed to the compressed time frame that you really go through in a normal process where you don't necessarily get a good feel who that team is. You might like the industry, you might like the company, but you don't really know that that executive is going to be the right one to drive the business kind of going forward. So this is an alternate means to kind of get there. I think that it also has the added benefit of taking you hopefully outside of those processes where the prices are frothy. You can kind of be a little bit more disciplined in what you're paying for companies, and you're not really kind of chasing it with 100 other private equity firms in a process.
Yeah, and for the executives here, what he means is investment bank deals versus proprietary. And as part of our coaching and development with all the executives, we say find proprietary deals. Investment bank deals, it's hard to add value. It's very curated, controlled atmosphere. Things are kept a little bit opaque in a lot of ways, unless you're smart enough to ask the right questions, which is also the benefit of having executives like you to help win processes,
Right.
to reveal weaknesses, and then use that in your strategy to pay. But well said.
Even if you ask the right questions, they might not always give you the straight answer. They're going to give you the polished answer.
Yes. Yeah, the
All right.
lipstick and a pig.
So we'll get started then with questions. I'm going to start with just a broad assumption, and then we'll see if our panelists and the audience would agree with that. So this is about how you select a private equity partner. So I'll just include three things in my assumption. Number one is that a private equity firm or private equity investor is focused on creating value rather than just financial engineering, and values talent. So that's my number one assumption. And number two assumption, the investment horizon is a bit longer than just your typical 5 to 7 years. Again, I'm looking to for people to either refute or support, so either one. And then the last one is those private equity groups or investors who might be a little bit outside of the beaten path. So it's either they have investing out of a family office, or they have in the network, they bring other people in, so it's not your, kind of larger institutional investor, but maybe a boutique, maybe that's the right way, or somehow differentiating companies. So those are three, three assumptions that I'd like to make, and I'd like to start with the panelists, and you can feel free to cover all of them, some of them, whatever makes sense to you. And please refute or support any. Okay, so you want to start?
With the first topic in terms of kind of building companies versus financial engineering, I don't think you can play in the lower middle market space where we play and assume that financial engineering is going to get you anywhere. You have to look to grow companies, whether that's the top line or the bottom line. We prefer both. And for us at RFE, and it's probably similar to the other guys, organic growth is one side of the equation. The other side is creating the infrastructure, both the management team and the resources to do a buy and build strategy. So at RFE, we average about 3 add-on acquisitions per platform company. In some instances, we do a lot. In some instances, we may do 1 or 2. But in general, we're looking for a path to do both in any opportunity that we kind of do as a platform.
And Peter, if I ask you a question, we're really fans of buy, build, and grow, working through consolidation. Do you acquire multiple companies at the same time? Do you prefer to stagger? And what is your typical approach to?
We've done both. I would say we wouldn't do any more than 2 at once. But we've definitely kind of tried to get 2 companies to come together. And it's more just to get critical mass. Sometimes some of the opportunities that come might be a little bit smaller than the 5 million of EBITDA. So to get to that critical mass, we need to put 2 together at once. But we're generally, back in the, when I first started in the business back in the mid 90s, you having roll-ups where they were bringing 8, 10, 12 companies all together trying to take them public, and it was just not many of those companies survived because it was really just a mass and they weren't looking to get synergies. So we want to be a little bit more disciplined, and methodical in it, so you kind of get the true integration benefits as you're looking through it.
And why, if we just stay on this topic a little bit longer, why this kind of investor who is interested in growth through positions would be a good partner to an executive, or somebody who not only that and also who is interested in building value versus just financial engineering? Why that kind of firm would be a good partner to an executive?
I don't know that it's any better or worse than any other type of firm. Quite honestly, it really depends on what the executive's looking to get out of it. I think what you're going to get in the private equity environment, and there's all different forms of private equity, but we tend to be fairly involved in our companies at the board level, setting strategic direction, helping the executives think through what are the next logical steps that you want to take for a company, so that when we get to an exit event, we've created something that is better and hopefully more profitable, but also of value to somebody else. So what are kind of the key things that you need to put in and around a company to make it attractive to the next logical buyer? And that's either a presence in the market, a management team that can continue to kind of build that company from that point on. But we always, one of my partners likes to say, we kind of take kind of the troubled youth and create young adults, so that kind of the next organization doesn't have to put in a lot of time and effort to kind of go through those kind of formative years. So it's when you go to the next part of your question, which was the people side of it, that is kind of the key. And having that management infrastructure that not only can manage the company today, but if you start at 50, we want to invest in that team at 50 to get to 150, but also have the team at 150 that can take it to 300.
And with it usually a different team, and that's where the executive can play a key role.
Very, very likely, there's going to be key members on that team that are going to need to change and are going to outstrip their capabilities. We actually brought on board in an RFE, a former partner out of Spencer Stewart, to actually help us with talent management across our portfolio.
He attended one of our
Harry
conferences.
was here the last time. So we recognized early on that to build that team, you've got to have resources both at RFE and at the companies to really monitor, is that team being effective? Do you have the best team to kind of execute on your growth strategy? So we believe that human capital is a big component of what we're investing in and what we're creating for the next owner.
All right, Eric with Oregon. So the assumptions again, where it's not just financial engineering, but operational engineering. It's kind of out of beaten path. Maybe you're looking at strategies that other private equity investors are not necessarily looking for. And I think I mentioned you maybe not you're a generalist or not focused in a single industry. Don't have a deep expertise in one single industry. Any of this that applies to your firm?
Responding to, I guess, last sentence, what is a generalist investor? I think you're an expert in multiple industries, but don't just focus on one. If you're not sharp on an industry, you're probably not going to do well in the long term. So, because my group has done many transactions over the years, we tend to gravitate towards those industries where we've had success, where we can kind of jump from one industry to the other. But there's a long history and a large network of executives that we can kind of call on. That we're always looking to grow. So just because you're a generalist doesn't mean you're not an expert in something.
I guess maybe I should rephrase it. In my experience, what I found is those private equity groups that open to learning about the industry, they don't have success track record, or they've never really invested. I think those seem to be better partners, and that's what I was really going to, rather than just say it's the level of expertise.
Look, I think private equity, one of our expertise is recognizing good executives, recognizing people who can add value and be talented. We may not know exactly how they're going to do it, but we say, okay, this person has something special, they can be additive to what we're doing. And that's our skill set. Your skill set is the specifics, ours is the kind of the general kind of finding you guys.
Sorry.
Please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I'll pick up that potato. One of the key things is that a lot of these businesses were started by entrepreneurs who, frankly, a lot of them got lucky, and they wound up in a situation, and they built this business up, and a lot of them, a lot of the areas that they really need help on are areas that you have experience in by working with much larger companies. Typically on the financial side, there's a lot of weakness there. It was an area of focus. They were primarily focused on driving top line growth, but also on the sales and marketing side. Really, that's an area that typically it was the owner of the business who was the chief sales and marketing guy, who was really driving that. And as the business grows, you start really building out your geographic footprint. You start really having to leverage more resources. That's an area that a lot of private firms really focus a lot of time in terms of building talent, and really need help from executives such as yourselves who have experience within much larger companies, really working with those groups and know what a proper professionalized sales marketing team looks like, as well as on the finance side. And I think that's really an area that people such as yourselves can really help us build out.
I want to piggyback on that and ask you what kind of experiences or qualities in the executive that really draw your attention. Obviously, you want to see certain level of performance, certain P&L, and certain number of years. But is there anything in particular that would pique your interest when you're reading a resume or speaking to an executive? Eric, please.
I would say I try not to read that many resumes.
So how do you learn about people?
It's like that.
Say more about that. Well, you try not to because
it's look, you're looking for nuggets of greatness. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. I'd rather have somebody talk to me and explain why they're great, feel wonderful, and all that. It's just easier. I'm probably going to miss the important thing if I don't know the particular industry or if I haven't seen that company before.
It's hard to get a management philosophy off a piece of paper.
Tell us more about that.
Just
What
one of the things that they believe is important in driving an organization. How do they value human capital? How do they kind of value kind of the revenue side versus the cost side? How do they manage it? You can look at statistics on a piece of paper, but you can't really understand how they're going to manage, drive, monitor all those types of things.
What about in personal either the way executive presents himself or what he puts emphasis on? Is there anything that really soft, characteristic that you're looking for or had in the past?
I think for us that the biggest thing is trying to find and tease out of kind of the resumes that we see people that have actually been hands-on operators. It's very difficult to take somebody that's been in a large conglomerate or a large organization running a P&L, but did they have work? Somebody mentioned working capital for it. Did they have the finance side of it? What was the kind of the support staff that corporate was bringing versus what resources they managed themselves? Running a small private company is hard.
It's very different,
and it's very difficult in operating in a corporate environment. So trying to find those people that might have been in a corporate environment that had autonomy. Is the key challenge. And so anything you can do to kind of differentiate yourselves and show that you've got, have that, it's easy to say I had P&L responsibility, but it's different from having real responsibility for an organization.
Something that I've seen a number of times, a great executive but doesn't have deep expertise in one single industry. So had lots of different experiences in unrelated industries versus someone who had 20 solid years in one industry, has lots of relationships and really knows industry in and out. How do you look at these types and anybody, if you have preference or can comment on this?
I think they're both fine. You just have to find the right organization that suits their strengths and their leadership style. There's certain instances where having that deep, kind of expertise is going to lead toward, a quicker path to do add-on acquisitions or other things like that.
So it's really about a match between.
It's a match between the executive, the opportunity, and the company that you want them to be involved in. I mean, we just brought a CEO into one of our existing portfolio companies that's in the marketing services space, and he hadn't done anything in marketing services before. But the way he managed people, the way he kind of communicated with his team was a fit for what we needed in that company at this point in time. So it just depends on the skill set and again, what their leadership style is, and does it match the organization, the culture of the organization.
And it depends on where, like to your point here, it depends on where the weakness is in the company. If you need somebody that really needs to come in, you've got great individual teams, but you just need somebody to bring it together and have them work together. It's more somebody like you just mentioned. If you need somebody that needs to drive top line and really needs to add some customers and really help grow that, you need somebody who's got more industry experience that really has relationships with potential customers they can bring to the business.
I'm going to kind of maybe answer it a little differently, which is if I have an industry that is particularly unique, I'll give you an example, the restaurant industry. If you have a background in manufacturing, you're probably not the right executive for my restaurant company. You might be great, but somebody with that 20-year history is probably most appropriate. But where the skill set is more transferable, absolutely. And then I would
what would be some examples of where skill sets, industries or segments, niches where transferability is much more apparent?
Yeah, look, we're working with an executive right now. He was a very successful executive for us at a portfolio company we sold. Broadly, his skill set, he knew how to do a very sophisticated sale where you're selling something complicated to what's called a large organization, and he just knew how to run that kind of company. Well, you can apply that same kind of mantra to a lot of different things and say, okay, you can fit here, you can fit here, you can fit there.
So that would be a top line opportunity, I would say, where you're looking for a sales-driven
It's
exec.
a complicated product. It doesn't just sell itself.
Sales cycle.
Long sales cycle, probably.
Also depends on, basic industrial manufacturing. I think that's very transferable between different sectors or niches. With healthcare, medical devices, things like that, where it's very specialized. It's very you have to have a lot of industry-specific experience, like restaurants. That and you really need a specialist.
Some other examples that I can think of is turnaround skill set would apply to multiple, right? Or entering new markets, entering foreign markets. Those would be transferable, I would imagine.
We try not to deal with the turnaround guys.
Why not? Look,
Ultimately, if a company is experiencing turnaround, that you need to be very focused as a private equity firm on that's what you're doing. It's going to take a lot of time, and that just has to be your model. Our model is growth. Other people's models can be turned around. We chose one thing, somebody else chose another, and that's kind of what we're focused on.
Which is actually a great point. I'd like to use a segue to the next assumption. Sorry.
Before you segue,
Yes, please.
I have maybe a different perspective to industry experience. I mean, I was in an industry, Fortune 50 customer. The colleague in my company was a 25-year veteran in the industry. Now, the counterparts, our customer knew his strengths and weaknesses. He could not achieve what somebody that came in from the outside with a few months experience and a different perspective could achieve with his customer.
Because they could outmaneuver him?
Because it's a known quantity. They know all his strengths, all his weaknesses. They play him. I mean, these people are, they've been growing up together in corporate life. And sometimes an insider like that may not be the right tool to really move the needle.
Yeah, that's why companies look for diversity. There is, in fact, a strategy to create a very diverse team, people from different industries, so they can bring fresh perspective. Also, many people suffer from confirmation bias, right? So whatever they know, they look for confirmation of that is right, and they miss signs that something is going wrong. So
I do think if you're very long in one industry, you get kind of blindness.
Yeah.
Because you're so used to this pattern of the industry that you don't really see what's happening in other industries.
That's a very good point. Any other questions? Oh, please.
When you talk to executives, are there any characteristics or things that are an immediate turn off and ring alarm bells?
A good question, thank you.
We have a no jerks policy.
Is it something they say?
It's another word that I can't really use right now. It's a little stronger word, but yeah, that's about it.
But often that about knowing if someone is their behaviors or belligerence or not often comes because they'll discover that through the deep dive into every company that you've worked at. They'll call key leaders, tell me about them. They'll find triangulations in, and they will develop a composite understanding of that. So you're not going to see that in just an interview. People are pretty good at just, being very cordial until their buttons are pressed.
Right.
I want to add an anecdotal experience that I have, and it's probably more common than not. Executive I working for a while and had a very good relationship and understood who he was when first time he spoke to our equity sponsor partner. He came across very arrogant, and it was a huge turnoff. And I knew that he wasn't the case. It's just his assumption, and we have another panel on debunking private equity, so we can talk more about this. But his assumption was that that's what expected. That kind of behavior, this kind of language, right? So we had to work on reverting that. But I don't know if you've had experiences like that. It was very clear.
Well, I think, for all of us, up here, we want to work with management teams that, are open to not only critique, but, kind of changes in strategy and other things like that, and knowing when they don't know all the answers. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek outside resources. You don't have to know everything. So the person that comes in that, is that all-knowing, I've seen it 500 times before.
It's a red flag.
It's going to be, are they really going to value us and what we can bring to the table?
So humble but experienced. Are there any? I know some, and we do as well. We look for certain telltales. Since we have you here, if you can share, is there anything? For example, one sign that we look for when executive describes his experience, whether he uses the word I did, I achieved versus we. So we prefer the latter. Is there anything else like that you pay attention to in the language?
I think we want to look if we, we're scrutinizing everything, absolutely, perhaps, but we have to be flexible. We're trying to find the right person at the right time, and we're gonna try to if we think you're good, we're gonna try to figure out a way to work with you and kind of integrate you into what we're doing. the key is the right person, but also quickly. If it takes me a year to do something versus 3 months, well, that time is money. So
Yeah, this is a really great point. I want to have the executives here as you're developing distinctions. Part of what you're hearing is each different firm has its own philosophy. Are they a growth firm? Are they a turnaround firm? There's distinctions here that are common to the industry that are not necessarily common to what you're doing. The other thing you
Not
just
a
heard,
fit, right? So may not be a fit.
Yes.
To describe.
and it may not be a fit. And the other thing Eric talked about, right person at the right time. So, and Peter talked about coming to these conferences. What's nice is they get to date you over a period of time versus when they're dealing with a deal that already comes pre-made. They don't have the time to get underneath the covers to see the informal. And, I get so many executives that I talk to, 3/4, probably maybe as high as 90%. Well, I need something now. I go, private equity doesn't work that way. You can hope that it'll work that way, maybe through a recruiter, because they have to do a replacement or an upgrade or in the company. But if you are looking to get in and proactive, it's a dating game, 12 to 24 months, because you're not really going to get considered fully for a position. It's right person, right time. And they're not
Trust.
thinking about that 9 months out. They're thinking right when it happens, now it's time. The right person at the right time. But you've got to be there way before.
Well, the flip side of that, though, is it also gives them an opportunity to see how we work.
Yeah.
So, going through and looking at various opportunities, looking at different companies, you're going to see how we think, how we ask questions, is it in line with kind of what we're looking for? And I would encourage all of you to, turn around and say, give us the names of, 5 of your CEOs that are in your current portfolio. I want to call them up. I want to talk to them about what it's like to work with you. We'd be happy to do that.
It's
Our
very
best
important.
references are existing CEOs.
Yeah.
Across all of these guys.
if a private equity firm doesn't want to do that, you probably should not have a long conversation with them.
It's really great.
Always have short conversations until you.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And then say about short conversations.
Talk to everybody.
Talk to everybody, yeah. But short. Remember how we said, this is, the conference is set up. You never need to really have more than 15 minutes conversation with the private equity till you get into something meaningful. Maybe it goes to a half hour, but that's it. They're also busy doing 2 things, looking for deals and building value in the ones they have. And you, until you happen to be the right person at the right time, it's just gradual, little bits over time.
Yeah, I was going to add that I feel like there is a lot of emphasis on trust and relationship, and I think a few of you mentioned that you go back to executives you had success with, because you know how they work, what they are able to achieve, and you need to protect your investment.
But also because it saves time. They're right there.
And that too. So I would agree with you. It's a marathon and a relationship building.
And you never know when you're going to step it up, literally. I mean, John, we're looking at a paperboard company right now that you could probably help us look at. It's just
Which John?
The one right in front of me.
Oh, that John. Okay, yeah.
This John. So, I mean, it's like you just don't know when kind of the universe comes together.
Yeah.
And you just got to be at the right place at the right time.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Any questions from the audience, please?
Actually, I've got a question that's a little bit towards finding the right PE firm. So in my case, I'm looking at small mid-cap companies, which are typically privately owned, original founders, owners, and they have an expectation that they want to get X amount of money out of this business for retirement reasons, for family trust. And of course, their expectation versus the cash flow ongoing to run that company is pretty great. How do I, in this case, find the right type of PE firm that can help with a transaction like that? Because to help get those over the line, because they're reaching that point in their life where they want to sell the company, but they've got some financial aspirations that probably need to be.
You mean they want 10 times or 30 times the
They want 10
revenue,
times,
things like that?
And the cash flow might say it's only worth 6.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So how do you find PE firms that are used to dealing with those types of individuals?
I think you got to say any of the groups here. I think you got to look for PE firms that have always operated down at the low end of the market over a long period of time. There's a lot of firms that started and raised their first fund at 100 million, were successful, raised 400 million, then they raised $1 billion, and they're not going to be able to help you navigate because it's a completely different sales cycle. But for firms that have consistently operated at the low end of the market, that's what we do every day. I mean, there's always kind of that mix match between kind of what the owner wants and feels they need to be able to sell the business and feel comfortable versus what the private equity firms. So you got to be creative in structure. You got to be use earnouts. You got to use seller notes. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of get around it. And really understanding kind of what is it that they're trying to achieve. Is it just a current income issue? Is it money in the bank issue? There's different ways that you can kind of attach each. But unless you're constantly working down to this end of the market, you're not doing that on a daily basis. So you just got to be creative.
If I may add a question to the audience, one way we try to solve this issue, mismatch of expectation and real valuation, is second bite at the apple.
Yeah.
And I think some of you mentioned that you prefer. Please, if you can.
I would love to tackle that one. So, I mean, typically, to your point, typically most of the sellers that we're working with are family management companies. But really, we focus on the ones that are looking not necessarily for the best price. What they're looking for is they're looking for a partner, take a nice level. They want to take some cash from the table. They don't want to put a lot of leverage on it. They want to keep pulling dividends out because we work with banks that allow us to keep paying dividends out to the equity holders. So the average rollover portfolio is about 40%. The average yield from dividend income is about 15%. So they get some cash off the table. Then they keep running the company. They keep they have that second bite of the apple that probably will be bigger than the first bite if we do our jobs right. And they keep pulling dividends out to supplement their income. So instead of going from pulling in $4 million a year dividends and all of a sudden having a $400,000 salary, which their wives hate, they like to go and keep pulling that dividends out.
Yeah, that's right. If I may comment on that, we often see the situation. There's certain lifestyle that they've developed and wife is used to, and the salaries they take or the cash they take home is not going to continue because the investor wants to reinvest in the business, wants to normalize the salaries. In fact, they're interested in normalizing because they want to get higher EBITDA, thus higher price. So then this is the kind of solution. So dividend is a solution. Are there any other, because this is very common for small businesses.
I'm just going to kind of address the second bite of the apple and how do you make that second bite potentially bigger than the first bite? And it's actually an earlier concept, which is financial engineering. That rollover is now going to become levered equity. Hopefully not over-levered equity. I think most of us sitting around this table are probably adverse to over-leveraging businesses. But if you roll over something and it's levered, and then that business grows, you're going to have an outsized return. If we then give you incentive equity, options or something equivalent to that on top of your levered equity, you mix that all together in a big bowl. I'll tell you what happened. 2 out of our last 3 exits, we had our CEOs, kind of former owners, who rolled over 30 to 42 times overall returns on their rollover equity. We did well, I'll say.
Curious, are you offering incentive equity to the owners as well, or only to the executives?
If they're going to remain active as
you do.
If they're going to sit there and continue to run the business, absolutely.
Yes.
I want to add some color, and then we're going to take a break here.
Okay.
The key word for all of you interacting with owners, and this is also true in selecting the private equity firm, is patience, right? To build patience, building the relationship with the owner, to get to the underlying needs. Don't be in a hurry, but also, be the guy who they want to sell to. It's just a matter of coming to terms. That's one thing. In selecting the private equity firms here, or anywhere, is you need to understand what ratio that they have of investment bank deals to proprietary deals. Why is that? Well, private equity firms that primarily deal with investment banks, that's all they're good at. It's all about a bow and a nice process. They're not going to have the patience to deal with you and the owner. Now, more and more private equity firms are going, you know what, we're not going to survive, or our future returns are not going to be that great if we continue to get investment bank deals. They're just going very, very sky high. So they are getting better and better at doing proprietary deals, but you want to find out, do they have a history of patience with that, okay? So they may only do 10% proprietary, but do they know how to deal with it? Give me some examples of how you work with owners, how far out, what you've dealt with. So you need to check that culture. Comments on that, guys?
Was 4 years too long?
No, there you go, example. Great example, 4 years.
That was for an add-on acquisition for one of our companies that you just had to, going back to your point, he had a price in mind. And, we had to either wait for the earnings to earn into the price or he had to reset his expectations, and it was ultimately a combination of both that happened. But, I think that if for the right opportunity, I don't think you're gonna find that a private equity firm is really gonna turn you away. I mean, we probably all have things that we've kind of got on our kind of follow-up list that are kind of back burner stuff that you just kind of check once a quarter and say, I know you were trapped in this company. Is anything come to fruition? So,
If I may add to that, it's patience, and I would strengthen the word and say it's persistence.
Yeah.
It's, the business is really, if you look at each individual combination of you, company, and an investor, has low probability. So it's the time and the number of opportunities that really creates the result you're looking for.
I'm going to add one more comment, then we have to take a break. So all of you, you're developing deal flow, you're developing your funnels. The other thing to keep in mind, never have just one target or you're emotionally too attached to it. Keep building your relationships to your network and be curiously engaged with your LinkedIn network and other networks and your friends, and talk to them that you're out looking to do deals and the 3 to 20 or 2 to 20 million EBITDA, and chase them down. Why? Because this is also what you're going to need to do day one with your if you're going to work in the private equity. Buy, build, grow is really what the lower middle market is about. So you got to build those muscles. One target is never going to do it. Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
I would just add on that real quick. I mean, the benefit of doing, having most of your deal flow through investment banks is you have a willing seller on the other side.
Yes.
Going through this network, and doing it on a proprietary basis, you don't really know that you've got a willing seller on the other end, and they might talk a good game until you find out that all of a sudden what you thought was the right valuation is something different. The other thing I would encourage you to do, and I don't know if you guys have the same thing, but when we do add-ons, a lot of times it's proprietary. We're using the CEOs to kind of go through, do all that stuff. If they've got their family business attorney sitting on the other side, advise them to get somebody that's proficient in deals that can really explain what this process is, what a contract looks like, because I can't tell you how many transactions that we've had go sideways because they were just getting bad advice.
I'd say make sure they have a good accounting firm too.
Yeah.
Yep.